Hi everyone, today is kind of a special episode because it's the last one that I'll be doing about the Unity game engine per se, at least until things get back to normal, if they ever do. As you probably know, there's recently been a big announcement from Unity on September the 12th about a new runtime fee. This has led to a lot of backlash from the community and several days of heated debates, with, let's be honest, rather inconsistent or vague answers from Unity. There's been countless sum-ups of the new fee system over the past days, with various re-updates as Unity tried to explain things or just completely changed points in their announcement because of the furious community feedback, so I won't go into all the details here. Basically, Unity has announced that starting January 1st, 2024, developers who create and distribute a game made with Unity will need to pay a fee whenever this game is installed by an end user, if the current number of installs and the total sales of the game exceed certain thresholds. Those thresholds vary a bit depending on your Unity license, but for example, for the free personal license, the fee will only start to apply when you reach 200,000 installs and $200,000 in the last 12 months. Once you exceed the thresholds, you just pay for those installs above the threshold. So typically, if your game is installed 200,001 times, and you've also made more than $200,000 in the last 12 months, then you'll need to pay 20 cents to Unity. Now, as is really well explained by Dan Poss in this video, if you run the numbers, you'll notice that it is actually fairly reasonable compared to, say, Unreal Engine's 5% cut on sales. Plus, as has been argued by Unity, and as can be observed in a lot of cases, this threshold may not be exceeded that often. And yeah, Unity is currently losing a lot of money, so I guess it makes sense from a business point of view to find some way of keeping the ship afloat. But, as Dan Poss and a lot of other people have also said, this is not about the money. This is about imposing a fundamental change of mindset with no consent, about unilaterally enforcing new license terms without any opt-in or opt-out option, and about miscommunicating on all of this a lot, in particular on the notion of install, which is at the center of this new per install fee. So okay, let's forget the fact that the fee system in itself is barely understandable, and once again supports this modern mantra of the richer you are, the less you pay, cause that's logical for some reason, or that a change this massive is announced just 4 months before the release date, or that the FAQ is having a hard time catching up with the social networks and is obsolete most of the time. The thing is that, up till now, Unity Engine has had no royalties. You simply had to pay a yearly subscription of roughly 1,800 euros once your game made more than $1,000. That was very different from Unreal Engine system, where for every sale above $1 million, you have to pay a royalty fee of 5% to Epic, but there is no yearly subscription fee. Again, it's a different philosophy, and it played a big role in why so many indie game studios chose Unity in the first place. But now, after years of investment in terms of skills, and software license, and costs, and perhaps assets, those studios are suddenly being told that the economic model changes with no right of appeal. So this is rightly making a lot of game studios really angry, and really doubting whether they'll ever use Unity again. Moreover, there's a big concern about this fuzzy notion of install. Since the first announcement, Unity's given more details and examples of what would be taken into account or ignored in terms of installs. For example, if the game is given as part of a humble bundle, or a little demo that doesn't contain the entire game content, or is just installed for testing purposes and CI, then it won't count as an install. But an early release, an alpha, will count as an install. And even pack subscriptions, like Microsoft Game Pass, will count installs, even though this time, Unity explained that it would be at the expense of Microsoft themselves. So yeah, that's also another thing, like, good luck trying to have Microsoft pay Unity fees for the game on the Microsoft Game Pass. What might actually happen is that they'll either refuse Unity games, or people will just naturally want to remove their games from those stores. And still, all that doesn't answer the main question. which is how exactly is Unity going to count installs? Are they going to add some routine that calls a server in the HQ every time a Unity game is run? And if so, what data will it send? And how will they track the fact that it is the first install, since they were adamant to reassure the community multiple reinstalls and install bombing won't be possible? What does it say in terms of privacy for the developers and for the players? At the moment, Unity's answer is far from satisfying, because as stated in their countlessly repeated tweets from the 12th and the 13th, they will leverage an internal proprietary data tracking system and can't disclose more info on how it will actually work. Some sources even go as far as suggesting that they don't really know how they will do it. And finally, there's the retroactive part, which is to many, me included, the biggest problem here. In short, Unity said that this new fee, although it wouldn't apply directly to pre-existing games, would take all the games available of January 1st, 2024 into account for the threshold checks. Meaning that if you released a game made with Unity 10 years ago, and you've gradually made a fair amount of money and gotten a good amount of installs, and you're still making just above the $200k, then next January, you'll start to pay Unity for any new install of your game. A game that you released in agreement with their previous terms, but that now suddenly gets subjected to these new ones, because they said so. Remember when in an official 2019 Unity blog post, they proudly explained that any changes to the terms of service would not apply retroactively to games made on older versions of the engine? No? Well, apparently neither do they. Oh yeah, and by the way, that sentence kind of funny in this instant. Now the real problem is that if they decide to change their terms unilaterally like this time, who says they won't do it again in the future? So to me, and to a lot of members of the game dev community, the issue isn't really about paying a new made-up fee. It's about everything that goes along with it, and that is supposedly okay. And yeah, by the way, you don't have a choice. Truth is, I'm really sad to see it come to this. For the past few years, I've seen Unity steadily decline, and this month, they've breached the trust of all their users with a hard-to-excuse new pricing scheme that simply got enforced on everyone in the worst possible way. I have been using Unity for 15 years, which is more than half my life, and this past couple of years, I've enjoyed sharing all I'd learned about it with plenty of game dev enthusiasts. It's one of the core topics of my channel, it's one of the reasons I managed to live off my content creation today, and yet I cannot decently continue supporting and promoting, to some extent, this game engine. Actually, I'm one of the lucky ones, cause I haven't invested money in a video game. I'm not facing bankruptcy because some super cool invested fans have installed my games, and Unity suddenly is asking me for thousands of dollars. I don't really have any money to lose here. But I strongly believe that the video game industry is not just about big executives making bad decisions. It's also about passionate individuals making good decisions. This new ethic, if we can call it that, this run for profit, it doesn't align with my own principles. So, at least for the time being, I will be reorienting my programming tutorials to Godot, which has a great open source philosophy and has gotten so much better in the past months with Godot 4 that there's definitely a lot to talk about. Of course, I will also continue making Blender tutorials and videos about video game analysis or level design. But as far as game coding goes, we'll be talking Godot from now on, perhaps with some Unity comparisons and all, but yeah, I'm gonna focus on this new engine until Unity decides to get back on track, if they ever do. I sincerely hope that you'll follow me in this change, that you'll support the game developers that will be suffering from this change in the months to come, and that we'll be able to discover, discuss, and promote more positive and community-driven solutions in the future. And no matter what, I also want to thank you all for being there and being part of this community these past few years, and whether you decide to stay or not, a big thanks for all your support so far. But today, it's with a heavy heart that I say goodbye, Unity.